Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for candidates for Monroe City Council. I'm your moderator, Karen Madsen, and the candidates with us are, who are participating in the forum, are Kirk Scarboro running for position 7 and Jacob Walker running for position 7 as well. Those not unable to join us, although of course, as always, we invited everyone, are Amber Maida and Kevin Hanford, both running for position 1, Tammy Kinney running for position 2, and Kyle Fisher, a candidate for position 3. The League thanks all of you candidates for running for office, for your willingness to serve the community if elected, and for participating in this forum. It is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we do not endorse or oppose candidates or parties. We do take positions on issues which we have studied and upon which we have reached consensus. Ground rules for this forum were sent ahead of time to each candidate. Let me explain briefly the question and answer period rules. Opening and closing questions have been shared with the candidates. Other questions have not been shared, although the areas of interest, the issue areas this forum plans to cover were shared. And we'd like to take a moment to thank all the community members who sent us recommendations for those local issue areas. I'll pose the questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. 90 seconds will be allowed for answers to the final question, and I'll state this change clearly. We're using a countdown timer, which is visible to all the candidates. It shows elapsed time and will alert candidates when there are 15 seconds left and when time is up. Time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. When you see the timer turn red and hear the chime, you're done talking. The order of questions will change for each question, rotating through each of the candidates to ensure a fair and random sequence. I made a random determination prior to the beginning of the forum, and the order for the first question will be Mr. Scarboro, and then followed by Mr. Fisher. And these questions, the lead off on the question will alternate back and forth. So with all of that, we're ready to go. And the first question is for you, Mr. Scarboro. What qualifications?
Who's Mr. Fisher?
I'm sorry.
Who's Mr. Fisher? You said the people in here were myself and Mr. Fisher. Did you mean Jacob Walker?
I certainly meant Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, okay. You must have been profoundly concerned about that name change.
That's all good. I appreciate you, Kirk.
Thank you to both of you for keeping me on track.
Okay.
My apologies. Thank you. First question, which qualifications and experiences make you a strong candidate for this position?
Well, after 28 years in the Navy, 25 of which my years were spent in Naval Special Warfare, which is Navy SEALs, I retired at Master Chief or Force Master Chief for Naval Special Warfare Command. And with that time, I learned value of leadership and working with other people. After retiring at the highest rank, I went to work for the school district here in Monroe. I started off as a substitute janitor. I went to maintenance and won a position as the transportation supervisor here for the school district. I was hired and spent 17 further on years being in that position. That helped a lot, learning about the people, the children, what they want, how to get along, and how to make things work. All those years, I think, helped in the first place.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Mr. Walker, same question.
Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Cool. So in terms of qualifications, I would go back to my idea of what makes a good candidate. I'd say it'd be how representative they are of the community, their involvement in community and their past experiences. I lived in Monroe nearly my entire life. I went through K through 12 here. I've followed our city's government my entire life. I've seen our city grow and change. I'm now a small business owner here, a homeowner with plans to grow my family here. And I've been involved with the community activities here my entire life. People say that I'm young to be involved the way I am, but our young families need a voice, and I am happy to be that. When it comes to professional experience, I've been involved with real estate, enterprise software sales, and I'm now an insurance broker. I was appointed to Monroe's Economic Development Advisory Board, where I'm currently serving out a 4-year term, and I follow city council or city, county, state, and federal policy very closely.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, take the lead on this one, please. What are the biggest challenges facing Monroe, and what are its greatest strengths?
I would say greatest challenges is we've had a lot of residential growth in the last 5 years. It's been unreal. And we have 2 major access roads, Highway 2 and 522, that are currently overused. The city has had an issue with them for the last 5 years, and we can't seem to get the funding or progress on them to widen State Route 522. And it's a problem. So I would say traffic congestion is one of our biggest issues for sure. Next, I would probably say our city hospital is going through some troubles right now with staffing and budget that we really need to find a way to assist them in recovery for our citizens. I think our biggest strengths are our parks. Our community is amazing. We have a really familial feeling. And yeah, there is a lot to work with.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scarborough, your thoughts?
There you go. Thoughts on what his question?
Biggest challenges facing Monroe and Monroe's biggest strengths.
Well, our greatest strengths are our people. They're involved. They're looking forward to seeing what we can do to help them. We have done a lot with the legislature to help get our parks. The big park out in Lake Tide, the ball fields, all-weather ball fields, the new park that we've purchased in the North Monroe area to try and spread the availability around. Traffic is certainly a big thing. We have been working with the legislature to get 522 funding. We got some, of course, but we haven't gotten enough to make it what we need it to be. I dealt with it as a transportation supervisor for many, many years, and there's been a lot of improvements, but we have a ways to go. We only have a few arteries that come down into Highway 2, and they are becoming more and more plugged up because of the housing that's being built north of town, and that's a challenge. And then running Highway 2 around is a question.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. On to the next question, and you take the lead. What is your strategy for working productively with your council colleagues and with members of the public whose ideas or life experiences are different from yours?
Well, we have to you want me to wait? There we go. You have to realize that there are life experiences that are different than ours. And the best thing we can do is listen. We have to be able to hear what other people have to say. We have to try and see where they're coming from that we may not be coming from, whether it's their background, their diversity, or just being different from us. And I'm only 1/7 of the city council, and the city council in the past 6 years that I've been on it has been working very well together to try and make things better for Monroe. They've got a needs assessment out that will be talked about a little later tonight in another forum. And there's an opportunity there for the public to give their input to the results of that needs assessment.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Walker.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Of course. What is your strategy for working productively with your council colleagues and with members of the public whose ideas or life experiences are different from yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. My passion in school was always debate. And a big skill of debate is being able to take either side on an issue and discuss it well. So I've always had a passion for hearing the other side. I like challenging each other on the issues because it only makes both sides better. I think on a micro community level like Monroe, we have a really, really good opportunity to avoid the hyper-partisanship that is so prevalent in the national scope right now. And I think that on a community, municipal level, we've got the opportunity to engage as neighbors and discuss those ideas. Diversity is a beautiful thing. From every point of view, you can learn something and improve yourself. And policy that is written with the most diverse crowd is always going to be the best because it's going to serve everyone in its fullest capacity. So,
thank you, Mr. Walker. Take the lead on this one, if you would, please. What should be Monroe's plan to deal with existing or potential racial inequalities?
Yeah, that is a great question. Obviously, the last few years have been, or the last year in particular, has been really tough. I think that the city has a role to play in speaking out against injustices and inequities. I think that the city has a part to play in organizing and supporting community events to celebrate diversity. I attended the city's first, I guess, formal, or it wasn't even the city's formal event, but the first Juneteenth event in Monroe over the summer, and it was amazing. I loved it, and I bring that up because it makes me realize that the city can do more to help organize those events. Yeah, I think the city could do a better job speaking out, becoming more involved with our community groups. We have a great one that just started, Monroe Equity Council in Monroe, hearing out those other perspectives and finding ways that the city can enact policy solutions that'll help the those who are victim to inequities.
Mr. Scarborough, same question.
Well, there shouldn't be inequities, but they are, and they stem from sometimes people coming from diverse backgrounds that they need to recognize. At the city, we've invested in diversity training, equality, inclusion training for senior leaders. As we all know, leadership setting the right example is what should be going on. Our police officers have been through more than 1,000 hours of training for de-escalation, use of force, crisis response, and how to actively challenge bias in our community. We have built a lot of things into what happens in the city to try and get all ethnic groups out together so we can learn from other people and realize that nobody got to choose their ethnic background that they were born into, and that we need to learn about the other ethnic groups as well.
Mr. Scarborough, take the lead, please, on this next question. What are the most pressing environmental issues that Monroe faces, and what would you propose to address them?
Well, climate change is real. We know that, and people are part of it. They aren't everything, but they're certainly part of it. It's not just a city problem, it's a regional problem, it's a world problem. And we need to do our part, try and mitigate our share of that problem. The city has hired its first stormwater staff person to help monitor that, if you will. We're adding more hybrid vehicles to our fleet at the city to try and mitigate the fuel issue that people talk about. That's about it.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, in survey after survey, Monroe citizens have said time and time again that the thing that they love most about Monroe, what brought them out there, is the feeling of being connected to nature, whether that be the river or being close to the mountains. It's really the heart and soul of Monroe. In the last 5 years, the last 10 years, with all the new building in Monroe, we've seen a lot of our green belt be chipped away up Chain Lake Road by Brown Road. I actually had a video the other day, and a lot of people were commenting on the fact that, man, things have changed, and the city needs to be doing more to proactively mitigate new building with expansion of our parks and green spaces. We need to protect that, and we really need to be proactive in requiring that new construction invest in parks and growing our community green spaces.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, you'll take the lead on this next question. It's a bit of a long one. It was submitted by one of the folks from the league who's interested in your response to this. I'll ask the question first. It's about a piece of legislation that passed recently, and then I'll describe the legislation a little bit. You two probably know about it, but our listeners might not. So just a bit of background. Just this last legislative session, House Bill 1054 was passed. And the question about it will be, how might the implementation of the requirements of House Bill 1054 impact public safety in Monroe? A little bit of background. House Bill 1054 establishes requirements for tactics and equipment used by peace officers, which places strict limitations on or eliminates the use of chokeholds and neck restraints, canine teams, tear gas, military equipment, and vehicular pursuits. It also prohibits firing a weapon upon a moving vehicle and requires officers to notify occupants of her or his office notify occupants of his or her office and purpose when executing a warrant. And again, the question about that is, how might the implementations of those requirements impact public safety in Monroe? Mr. Walker.
Yeah, this is a really good question and one that I've taken kind of a hard stance on. More than anything, I appreciate our law enforcement so much. I've got a lot of family that have been law enforcement and first responders. So I wanted to talk to a lot of Monroe police officers to get their take on the bill. And I think the recurring issue is that until you've stood in their shoes and dealt with a life or death scenario where they wish that they had non-lethal weapons like tasers or rubber bullets, we can't truly understand the risk that they feel in that moment. And I think that legislators don't know the effects of their laws. I spoke with a police officer who physically thought that they might not be able to defend themselves. And I know that this law took away a lot of that person's weapons that they could use to do so. I wish that I had longer than a minute to speak on this. There's a lot of context.
Thank you. Mr. Scarboro?
Well, I couldn't agree with Jake anymore. He's stated it very well, and I have the same concerns he does on the issue. Being from a military background and being in SEAL teams, I know what it's like to have the question of whether or not you need to use a gun or not, or if you have the right tools you need to be the one that surfaces as the winner. And I think we've taken a lot of that away from our police officers. I do know that our police chief has not allowed several of the things that are in that bill already, and that's policy in our Monroe Police Department, and they're good ones. The chokeholds are out, the no-knock warrants he doesn't do. He does question the lack of being able to use a beanbag from a shotgun, and I think that the legislatures are ill-informed about what it takes to be a policeman in harm's way every day.
Thank you, sir. And this next one goes to you first. Which goals and strategies from Monroe's recently adopted 5-year housing action plan do you intend to prioritize?
Well, affordable housing needs to be prioritized. We understand that not everybody can afford a $750,000 house. I don't think I can. The affordable housing that we're letting be built or trying to get built is paramount in letting young families own a home and be part of the community. And we are building that kind of housing as fast as we can, and as, I won't say as cheaply, but as prudently as possible. We have more to do, but we do look at it, and we look at it as a council, and that's about all I can say.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah, we actually just spoke about this in our economic advisory board today. it is so incumbent upon the city to find a way to help Monroe residents, people who have lived here their entire life, or young adults that are starting to or looking to buy their first home. This recent growth has made median home prices in Monroe skyrocket. And it's starting to push a lot of our former community members out. And because of that, I think the city needs to dig their heels in and get very creative on housing solutions to help those people, whether that be townhomes or accessory dwelling units. We have to find creative ways to help those people out. Affordable housing has to be a priority. I think that we can do more. It's just going to take work, and the city needs to put in that work. So.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, take the lead, if you will, please, on this one. What are the issues, if any, in your city or town arising from the pandemic? How would you address them if you believe such issues exist?
Yeah, I would say two major issues. Obviously, mom and pop retail and mom and pop stores of all kinds have been hit the hardest in terms of businesses during COVID. Big box stores have really benefited from it. So the city needs to be very active, both in the form of permitting, ARPA funds, you name it. We have to do something to make sure that the mom and pop stores can hit the ground running. Secondly, I would say that mental health has been a real struggle. That community needs assessment that Kirk was talking about really demonstrated that our community or our area has a real problem with getting people with mental health issues, both transportation and treatment. And I think the city, again, can use ARPA funds actually to help those people. And lastly, community morale, I would say. ARPA funds as well. The city can do more for community events to help morale.
Thank you. Mr. Scarboro?
Well, here again, we're on the same page, both Jake and I, and the city has done a great deal. First, we had the first round of funds, and we put together a way to determine how to help people out, the small businesses. And we did that. The second round of this federally provided money is a little bit more cumbersome because the feds want more qualification, different answers to different questions. And I identified that to the city council, and going forward, they have streamlined that, or working to streamline the qualifications, acquisition of the funds to people. The city was quick to take as much charge as they could as far as helping people. We've helped a lot of the small businesses, and I think that it's paramount that we do more for the small businesses.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Scarborough, for you first. Should Monroe involve residents in decisions regarding budget challenges, new taxes, service cuts? If so, how should the residents be involved?
The answer is yes, they should be involved, and they're welcome to come to any city council meeting and take their time to express their concerns. The budget is posted before. There are 2 readings of the budgets before it is adopted by the city council or the city. And I think that anytime anybody wants to be heard, we'd be glad to hear them at the city council.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Yeah, Kirk said it well. I would say absolutely. Absolutely. I think more than anything, government needs to be representative. These people want more than just electing someone for who they are. They want to be heard. I actually helped the city when it was coming up with it's called the Imagine Monroe survey. It was supposed to help guide us in our new vision statement and goals for the next decade in Monroe. And I actually helped them work on ways to disperse that survey for involvement. It had, I think, record participation numbers. So we need to be creative. We need to think about the ways that people communicate in the modern world. I'm sorry, people don't come down to City Hall as much as we all wish that they would to voice their concerns. So we need to be proactive in listening to them, whether that be meet and greets at a coffee shop. We've got to find some other way besides, if you want to make your point, come down and say it for the city council, because people just don't do that.
Mr. Walker, what are your thoughts on whether Monroe should consider consolidation of some services like police or fire, libraries or parks with other districts outside Monroe?
I would probably be against that. I think that Monroe, with its continued growth, has developed more and more of a need to maintain its own departments. I think the Monroe Police Department is a perfect example of a very well-run city police department. And I know that Snohomish does something where they contract with the Snohomish County Sheriff. I think Monroe's current method with police is amazing. When it comes to fire, Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue has done an amazing job as well. And obviously they were one of those that consolidated with others. And I think Monroe has very much benefited from that. So I guess I would rephrase my answer to, I think we have done a really good job so far letting those different services use their own expertise to make those decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Scarboro?
Jake stole all my thunder. So we have done a great job with our police department here. They have done a good job. We don't need to contract for services outside of Monroe for that. As Jake has said, we've amalgamated our fire department with others, and that's been good. There's a point, I think, where it might get too big. We have to be careful not to get to that point. So the next one that might be in question, and there probably should be some input from the community about whether or not we need our own court system, or do we go with the counties out there by the fairgrounds and don't need to have our own. So I'd like to hear if anybody, what their thoughts are on that. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Scarborough. What initiatives would you support to address food insecurity, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental health issues in Monroe and the surrounding area?
Well, drugs is a problem. Homelessness is a problem. Part of the problem is not having enough beds to send people to. The other part of the problem is, as they go out and offer these services with our police department and our embedded social worker, they get about 11 people once in a while, and out of the 11 people they approach and offer the services, maybe 1 or 2 will accept it. And then of the ones that accept it, the percentage is very low that finish it. Some of the challenges are the beds that are available to take them to. Some of the challenges are getting them to the beds, like in Everett. We have addressed that at the city council, and we are working on ways to try and help those people get to their programs.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, your thoughts?
Yeah, I keep talking about them, so I just want to make sure that everyone knows ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act, is allotments that have been given to states, local governments for COVID relief. So when it comes to the ARPA funds, the city has a really good opportunity to address some of these issues in a big way. When it comes to food insecurity, drug and alcohol abuse, a lot of it ties back to mental health. Kirk was talking about the embedded social worker program that the city enacted a few years ago. And I think it's gone very well. I think COVID caused a slight setback, but we need to not lose the progress that we've made. I think we need to continue focusing on plans like that. Secondly, I think we need to allot some of these funds that we've received to develop a sort of mental health crisis response team. That's an idea that's been floated. And I think that the more we focus on mental health, the more that these problems will naturally solve themselves. So obviously we should address them directly.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And here's the final question for the evening. Mr. Walker will lead off. And for this question, you'll have a generous 90 seconds to respond. You'll see the timer reflect that when it comes up. And the question is, What additional issues or information would you like to bring to the attention of the community?
Yeah, so I will go with two creative ones. I know I mentioned at the very beginning about the hospital, and that's one that has just recently been brought to my attention, but it's a big one. With the cycle that our current hospital is in, we might not have it in a few years, both because of budgetary reasons and staffing issues. And the city needs to know that. The citizens need to know that. I think that the city government has a responsibility to do everything in our power to not let that facility close. With the housing growth that we've enabled, there's a lot of people that depend on that facility, including up the valley, Salton, Gold Bar, Index. People need a local place where they can go for medical care. Sometimes you don't have 45 minutes to make the drive to Everett. So we need to do more to protect that, whether it be working with the hospital district, securing more funds, you name it, we've got to do something. Secondly, redistricting is coming up, and the city has an opportunity in whatever way it shakes out. We're going to have a chance to potentially have new voices in the legislature to help us with Highway 2 and 522 funding. That's been an issue in the past, is we've got to find a way to get it through the legislature. And I think in the next few years, however this redistricting shakes out, we're going to have a really good opportunity to do so, in my opinion, no matter what. So we're going to need someone who is pragmatic and can find solutions.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mr. Scarboro, same question.
Yes, the hospital is a very important entity here in our community, and for all the reasons that Jake has delineated, so I need not say any more about that because I agree. I'd like to hear from the community on several of the things. What kind of stores do they want to see in Monroe that they think are not here? What kind of restaurants? What kind of retail stores do they want? The other is transportation. All the transportation is coming off of those arteries we talked about north of town, coming into town, with the exception of probably 203. Everything else is downtown. So I've talked on several occasions with the city council about, I'd like to hear from the community how they feel about a possible train stop in Monroe. The train, as far as the Amtrak, comes through here once a day going east, once a day going west. With the technology you have nowadays, if nobody bought a ticket in Monroe for the day, the train wouldn't have to stop. I want to know how they feel about, instead of going to Everett to get on the train to go back to Monroe to go to Wenatchee, how a train stop would help us. 522 is a big issue as well, but we are working with the legislatures and have gotten help from them, and we got to recognize the help we have gotten from them, understanding the quagmire down in Olympia.
Thank you so much. And with that, we're at the end of the forum. The League appreciates you candidates for joining us and for running for office. A recording of this forum and others will be available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and the League's YouTube channel. You can find links at lwvsnoho.org. We encourage our listeners to explore additional information about these candidates and all the candidates. The Snohomish County Voters Pamphlet will be mailed to residences starting October 13th. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, is another good source for nonpartisan voting information. Finally, general election ballots will be mailed on October 14th, coming right up, and Election Day is November 2nd. Please vote. This concludes our candidate forum. Thank you all for joining us.